My fiancé said, "I want a life that feels bigger, faster, and more luxurious than this." I quietly canceled our wedding plans and walked away without any drama. Months later, she tried reconnecting after discovering the luxury she chased left her financially broken and emotionally exhausted instead. "I want a life that feels bigger, faster, and more luxurious than this." She said it on a Sunday morning. Coffee still hot on the counter. Sun coming through the kitchen window. My ring on her finger. And she said it like she was talking about the weather. Casual, certain, already decided. I didn't say anything back. I just looked at her, and somewhere underneath the silence, I felt something shift. Not anger. Not even surprise. Just a quiet, awful kind of knowing. The knowing that tells you a chapter is ending before you've even turned the last page. And what I didn't realize in that moment, what I couldn't possibly have understood standing there in my kitchen with a coffee mug in my hand, was that this one sentence, said without guilt, without hesitation, without even looking up at me, was going to change the entire direction of both our lives. She wanted bigger. I was about to show her what smaller looked like, and I was going to do it so quietly, she wouldn't even hear me leave. Her name was Qley, and I had loved her for 4 years. For years of Sunday mornings. For years of her laugh in the car on long drives. For years of knowing which coffee she wanted before she asked. For years of building something real, something quiet, something ours. If you enjoy real stories like this, subscribe, because what happened next changed everything for me. We were 31, both of us working decent jobs in the city. Not rich, but not struggling. Comfortable, and I mean that in the truest sense of the word. The kind of comfortable that takes years to build and feels like safety. The venue was booked. The photographer was booked. Deposits had been paid. Her dress had already been altered twice because she kept changing her mind about the neckline, and I had said nothing about it because I was happy. Genuinely, stupidly happy, every single time. My best friend Nash had already cleared the weekend. Her sister had already bought a bridesmaid dress she complained was 2 shades too pink. We were 4 months out from the wedding. 4 months from the day I thought was going to be the best one of my life. And that Sunday morning, standing in a kitchen that smelled like coffee and felt like home, something cracked quietly inside something I thought was solid. I didn't realize it yet, but I was already losing her. And the strangest part? She had already left. She just hadn't told me. We met at 27. Mutual friends. A bar in Lower Manhattan. A conversation that ran 3 hours longer than either of us planned. Qley was smart and sharp and full of opinions about everything. Films, food, people she'd just met. I fell hard and fast. We moved in together after a year and a half. The apartment was small, but we made it ours. Looking back now, the warning signs were there long before that Sunday. But I was good at explaining them away. The first time I noticed something shifting was about 8 months before the kitchen moment. Qley had started following a different crowd online. I know how that sounds. Petty, small. But bear with me. It wasn't the accounts themselves. It was the way she'd go quiet after scrolling for an hour. The way she'd put her phone down and look around our apartment with this expression I couldn't name at the time. I can name it now. Dissatisfaction. Not with me specifically, at least not at first. With everything. With the apartment. With the neighborhood. With the pace of our weekends. She started mentioning things casually. Her co-worker Qley had just booked a villa in Croatia. Qley's boyfriend had surprised her with a weekend in Paris. Qley had gotten a new car. One of the German ones with the interior that looks like a cockpit. I listened to all of it. I nodded. I said the right things. I never once thought, this is a problem. I thought, she's just venting. Everyone gets restless sometimes. But there was something underneath those stories that I kept missing. She wasn't telling me about Qley's life because she found it interesting. She was telling me because she wanted it. And she wanted me to notice the gap between what Qley had and what we had. And she wanted me to close it. I didn't understand that then. I understand it now. 6 months before the kitchen moment, the comments started getting more pointed. Not cruel, just directed. Don't you ever get tired of eating at the same 5 places? Our apartment is fine, but I feel like we've outgrown it. I wish we could just travel more. Like actually travel, not just weekend drives upstate. And then the one that I should have taken more seriously. I just feel like everyone around us is moving forward in a bigger way, and we're just here. I asked her what she meant by bigger. She paused. She tilted her head the way she did when she was choosing her words carefully. And she said, I don't know. Just more. More. I held on to that word for a long time. I rolled it around in my head. I tried to figure out what I could do differently. I worked harder. I picked up extra freelance projects on top of my regular job. I started looking at bigger apartments, ones we couldn't quite afford yet, but almost. I planned a trip to Portugal for our anniversary, the real kind, with flights in a hotel that had a rooftop pool overlooking the water. And Blakely loved the trip. She was the Blakely I'd fallen in love with for that entire week. Present, warm, laughing, fully there. I thought I'd figured it out. I thought she just needed to see that I'm trying. I thought, we're okay. We came home on a Tuesday night. By Thursday, she was looking at her phone again with that same quiet expression. That's when I should have understood that no trip was going to be enough. No apartment, no dinner, no upgrade. Because the thing she was chasing wasn't something I could hand her. And then came that Sunday. We hadn't fought the night before. Nothing dramatic had happened. It was just an ordinary Saturday, groceries, a walk, dinner at home. I had gone to bed feeling like things were decent. And she woke up, made coffee, sat down across from me at the kitchen table, and said it. I want a life that feels bigger, faster, and more luxurious than this. Not, I think we should try to do more. Not, I've been feeling restless lately. Not even, can we talk about something? Just that sentence. Complete. Declarative. Like she'd been rehearsing it. I put my mug down. I looked at her face. She wasn't upset. She wasn't nervous. She looked, and this is the part that stayed with me for a long time after. She looked relieved. Like she'd finally said out loud the thing she'd been carrying silently for months. And I sat there thinking, what exactly am I in this sentence? Am I the obstacle? Am I the limitation? Am I the thing she's trying to get past? I said quietly, what does that mean for us? And she said, and I want you to hear this exactly as she said it, I don't know. I just know I can't keep pretending this is enough. This, she meant our apartment, our neighborhood, our pace, our Sunday mornings with coffee on the counter, our life. She meant me. And the worst part, the part I've never said to anyone except Nash, is that she said it with so much ease. No hesitation, no pain in her voice. Like she was describing a sweater she decided to donate. Something that had served its purpose. Something she was done with. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't ask her to explain herself or take it back. I nodded slowly. I said, okay. Just that. Okay. And she looked slightly surprised, like she expected me to argue or beg or defend myself. But I had nothing left to defend. Because in that moment, something I'd been ignoring for months finally became impossible to ignore. This wasn't fixable, and I was done trying to fix it. I didn't tell her what I was going to do. That was a conscious choice. Not out of cruelty, I want to make that clear. But because I had learned, slowly and painfully, that Blakely responded to grand gestures and emotional declarations. And if I had said in that kitchen, I'm canceling the wedding, she would have cried. She would have apologized. She would have said she didn't mean it the way it sounded. And I would have believed her. And we would have been right back in the same place in another 3 months. I couldn't do that again. So I made the decision quietly. I went to work on Monday. I called the venue during my lunch break. I explained the situation, kept it brief, asked about the cancellation terms. I lost some of the deposit. I accepted that. Then I called the photographer. Same conversation. Then the florist. Then the caterer. I spent 4 days quietly dismantling everything I had spent a year building toward. Every phone call was hard. Not dramatic. Just hard in the way that quiet things are hard. The way packing boxes is hard. The way handing back a key is hard. Not loud pain. Just the specific weight of undoing. Nash called me on Wednesday night. I told him. There was a long silence on the phone. Then he said, "You sure?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Okay, I'm here." That was it. No speech. No analysis. Just, I'm here. I needed exactly that. I sat Blakely down on a Thursday evening. She was in a good mood. She'd had a good day at work. She was talking about something a friend had sent her. She was smiling. I let her finish talking. And then I said, "I've canceled the wedding." The smile didn't disappear immediately. It sort of delayed. Like her brain needed a second to process what her ears had just heard. Then she said, "What?" I said, "The venue, the photographer, the vendors. I've canceled everything." She stared at me. "When? This week? Why would you do that without talking to me?" I looked at her for a moment. Then I said, "You told me on Sunday that this life isn't enough for you. I heard you. I'm not going to marry someone who feels that way. That's not. I didn't mean it like that. I think you did. I think you meant exactly what you said. And I think some part of you is relieved right now, even if another part is surprised." She didn't answer immediately. And that pause told me everything I needed to know. "We can talk about this," she said. "We can work through it." And I said, and I mean this without malice, Blakely, I've been working through it for 8 months. I've been listening. I've been adjusting. I've been trying to figure out how to be more so you feel like you have enough. But I don't think the problem was ever something I could fix. And I'm not able to keep trying. She cried. Of course she cried. And it hurt. It still hurts to remember it. Because I loved her. That hadn't stopped. Love doesn't vanish on a Thursday evening just because a decision has been made. But love alone was not enough. It never is. She asked me if I was sure. I said yes. She asked me if there was any chance. I said no. And then she asked something I didn't expect. She said, "Is this because of her?" And I said, "There's no one else. This is about you and me and what you said and what I've known for months." She left that night to stay with a friend. She came back for her things over the next 2 weeks. It was quiet. No blow-ups, no scenes. Just boxes. Just the slow, careful archaeology of separating two lives that had been woven together for 4 years. She took the blue chair I never liked anyway. I kept the bookshelf. And that was that. The first month was brutal. I'm not going to romanticize the silence. I'm not going to pretend I felt free or liberated or any of those things people claim to feel after breakups when they're performing okayness for an audience. I felt empty. I felt the specific grief of a future that won't happen. That's different from the grief of a person. It's the grief of possibility. The wedding that won't be. The house we talked about. The Saturday mornings we'd never have. That kind of grief doesn't announce itself loudly. It lives in small moments. Coming home to a quiet apartment. Making 1 cup of coffee instead of 2. Seeing a restaurant she would have loved and having no one to tell. Nash checked in regularly. He'd show up with food sometimes without being asked. He's a good friend in the way that counts, present when it matters, and quiet when quiet is what you need. I threw myself into work, not as an escape, or maybe a little as an escape, but genuinely, I found clarity and focus. I took on a project I'd been putting off. I spent evenings reading instead of watching whatever we used to watch together. I started running again, something I dropped 2 years in. Not transformation, not a montage, just a person relearning the shape of his own days. And slowly, not quickly, not dramatically, I started to feel okay. Not healed, just okay. And okay was enough. I heard things through mutual circles. I wasn't following her life, but the city is smaller than it looks, and people talk. Within 3 months of us ending, Blakely had found what she was looking for, or what she thought she was looking for. His name was Kane. He was in finance, not the steady, unglamorous kind, but the kind that comes with bottle service and weekend trips to Miami and a wardrobe that costs more than some people's rent. Kane had the life Blakely had described on that Sunday morning. Bigger, faster, more luxurious. I heard she'd moved into his place, a high-rise in Midtown, within 6 weeks of them meeting. I heard she was posting constantly. Rooftop bars, private dinners, international weekends. The whole aesthetic performed perfectly. I'll be honest, I looked once. Just once. I saw the pictures. She looked happy. She looked like she was exactly where she wanted to be. And I felt a complicated feeling. Not jealousy exactly, but something adjacent to it. Something like, was I wrong? Was I too slow? Was I too ordinary? But that feeling passed quickly, because I knew it wasn't the right question. The right question wasn't whether Kane could give her more. The right question was whether what he was giving her was real. And that answer, I decided, wasn't mine to know. I put my phone down. I went for a run. I let it go. About 5 months after our split, I ran into a mutual friend named Ren at a coffee shop near my office. We hadn't spoken much since the breakup. Things got complicated with shared friends, the way they always do. Ren sat down across from me, and there was a brief, careful pause before she said anything. Then, "Have you talked to Blakely lately?" I said no. Ren nodded, slowly. "She's having a rough time." I didn't ask for details. It's not that I didn't feel anything. I did. I just didn't think it was my place. But Ren kept talking, not out of gossip, I think, but out of genuine concern. She told me that things with Kane had moved fast on purpose. Fast because Blakely was eager for that life, and Kane was eager for the attention that came with someone new and willing. She told me that the lifestyle was real, the dinners, the trips, the high-rise, but that it came with conditions. Kane was possessive. Kane expected a certain performance from her. The picture-perfect aesthetic she'd been posting wasn't just content. It was a requirement. And underneath it, Blakely was spending money she didn't have. Trying to keep up with a lifestyle that was his, not hers. She had taken on credit card debt. She'd asked to borrow money from her sister. And she was running, finally, quietly, out of runway. I listened to all of this. I thanked Ren. I finished my coffee. I walked back to work, and I felt something that surprised me. Not satisfaction. I want to be clear about that. I did not feel satisfied. I felt sad. Because no matter what had happened between us, the version of Blakely I loved was still a real person living in a situation that was hollowing her out. But that wasn't mine to fix. I had learned that lesson well. 8 months after our breakup, I was sitting at my desk on a Tuesday afternoon when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then I saw the text. Hey, it's Blakely. I know this is out of nowhere. Can we talk? I stared at the message for a long time. There's a version of this story where I feel vindicated, where I feel powerful, where I feel like this is the moment I've been waiting for. But honestly, I just felt tired. Not angry, not cold, just a deep, settled tiredness at the idea of reopening something I had worked so hard to close. I didn't respond that day. I thought about what I wanted to say and whether I wanted to say anything at all. By the next morning, another message had come through. I know I don't have the right to reach out. I'm not asking for anything. I just need to talk to someone who actually knew me. Someone who actually knew me. That phrase sat with me. Because I did know her. I had known her better than anyone, probably. And there was something honest in that message that I couldn't dismiss. So I replied. I said, I'll meet you for coffee. 1 hour. We met at a place near the park. Neutral ground. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with her hands wrapped around a mug the way she always did when she was nervous. She looked different. Not bad. Just different. Thinner in the face. Tired around the eyes. She was still put together. She always was, but the ease was gone. The ease I remembered was gone. We said hi. We ordered. And then she just started talking. She told me about Kane. She told me about the lifestyle. She told me that within the first 2 months, she realized the life she'd imagined and the life she was actually living were two different things wearing the same outfit. The dinners were real. The trips were real. But the respect wasn't. The stability wasn't. The feeling of being known, of being genuinely seen by another person, wasn't there at all. She said, he wanted a version of me, not actually me. And I nodded, because I understood that. Then she said, I ran up almost $19,000 in credit card debt trying to keep up with him. I didn't react. I just listened. I had to move out of his place 2 months ago. I'm back in a studio in Brooklyn. She looked at the table. I look back at our apartment, and I think about how stupid I was. You weren't stupid, I said. I was ungrateful. Those aren't the same thing. She looked up at me. I said this isn't enough. I said that to your face. I know. And you let me go. You didn't fight me. You just let me go. Yes. Why? I thought about it. Then I said, because you told me what you wanted. And it wasn't me. And I wasn't going to spend my life trying to be something you'd settle for. She closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, they were wet at the edges. I'm not here to ask for you back. I know. I just needed to say that I was wrong. And that I'm sorry. You deserved better than what I said to you. And here's the thing. Here's the truth that I didn't expect. I believed her. Not because she was crying. Not because she was in a harder place than she'd imagined. But because I could hear in her voice the difference between someone who was performing remorse and someone who was actually carrying it. Blakely had always been honest, even when honesty hurt. That hadn't changed. And I was grateful for it. I told her the truth. I told her that for the first month after she left, I questioned everything about myself. That I wondered if I was too small, too slow, too ordinary. That I went through a period of time where I measured myself against what she'd gone looking for and found myself lacking. She looked surprised. I think she expected me to be fine. People always expect the one who made the decision to be fine. But making the right decision doesn't protect you from the grief that follows it. I told her that too. Then I said, but I also learned something. What you wanted, the bigger, faster, more luxurious version. I couldn't have given that to you even if I tried. Because that version of life isn't what I want either. And sooner or later, that gap would have eaten us alive. She nodded. She said, I think I knew that. Then why did you stay as long as you did? Silence. Because I loved you, she said quietly. And I kept hoping the feeling would go away. What feeling? That it wasn't enough. I let that sit between us. Then I said, I hope you find what you're actually looking for. Not the version you saw online. The real one. She smiled at that. A real smile, a small one. I think I need to figure out what that is first. Yeah, I said. That's probably a good place to start. We finished our coffees. We walked out together. She hugged me at the door. A real hug. The kind that holds something actual. And then we went in different directions. And I walked back to my apartment feeling something I hadn't expected. Not victory. Not closure in the neat, movie version of the word. Just peace. The kind of peace that arrives quietly and doesn't ask for anything. Here's what I figured out in the time since all of this happened. The life Blakely wanted, the bigger, faster, more luxurious version, it's not inherently wrong. Some people genuinely want that. Some people are genuinely built for it. The problem was never what she wanted. The problem was that she wanted it while she was with me, in a life we'd built together, and she couldn't tell the difference between being with the wrong person and being in the wrong life. She couldn't tell whether she was unhappy with us or unhappy with herself. And the answer, the one she went looking for in rooftop bars and high-rises and a man with a platinum card, the answer wasn't out there. It was in the question she hadn't yet been honest enough to ask herself. Who am I when nobody's watching the feed? What do I want when no one's approving it? What does enough actually feel like from the inside? I couldn't answer those questions for her, and I was right not to try. I moved into a new apartment about 4 months after the breakup, bigger than the old one. Not because I was trying to prove anything, just because I could finally make a decision based entirely on what I wanted. No compromise, no negotiating. Just what do I want? I wanted the apartment with the exposed brick wall and the reading corner and the kitchen with actual counter space. I got it. I have a bookshelf that takes up an entire wall. I make 2 cups of coffee on weekend mornings sometimes, out of habit, and then I laugh at myself and pour one down the drain. I'm working on something I care about. I'm running again. I have Nash over for dinner on Thursdays, and he brings something from the deli downstairs, and we talk until 11, and it's one of my favorite things in the world. I'm not going to tell you I'm completely healed. I'm not going to tell you that the relationship didn't leave marks. Because it did. It left the specific mark of having loved someone fully and discovering that love isn't the only thing that matters. That compatibility and wanting the same things, those matter too. Those matter enormously. And I hadn't wanted to believe that. Because loving her had felt like enough. But it wasn't. And accepting that, really, deeply accepting that, was the hardest part of the whole thing. People ask me sometimes, in the way people ask things when they're really asking about their own lives, whether I regret doing it quietly, whether I should have fought for her, whether canceling those vendors without warning was fair. And I think about that. I do. But here's what I come back to every time. Loud decisions invite loud negotiations. And I had been negotiating silently for 8 months already. I had been adjusting. I had been trying. I had been making quiet offers, a trip here, a better restaurant there, a better apartment search, more hours at work, all trying to close a gap that kept widening no matter what I put in it. If I had announced the cancellation dramatically, she would have responded dramatically, and we'd have had the big conversation, the tearful reconciliation, the promises, the temporary warmth of having fought and made up. And then 3 months later, 6 months later, we'd have been right back there. Me trying. Her wanting something I couldn't be. Quiet wasn't cowardice. Quiet was clarity. And it was the most honest thing I'd given either of us in months. There was something Blakely said at the end of that coffee meeting that I've thought about more than anything else from that day. We were walking out, already putting on our coats, and she turned to me, almost like an afterthought, and said, "You always knew what you wanted, didn't you?" I thought about it. Then I said, "Not always. But I figured it out when it counted." She nodded. "I'm still figuring it out." "That's okay," I said. "You have time." She smiled. Small. Real. And then she walked away, and I stood there for a moment on the sidewalk. November air, cold and clear. City moving around me the way it always does. People, taxis, someone's dog pulling at a leash. All of it ordinary. All of it exactly enough. And I put my hands in my pockets and I walked home. She wanted a life that felt bigger. I wanted a life that felt like mine. Turns out, those were never the same thing. And the moment I stopped pretending they were, I finally got what I was looking for.